What's up, YouTube? Silver Dragons here, and today I'll be talking with Keith Neumeyer, the founder and CEO of First Majestic Silver, also founder and chairman of First Mining Gold. We'll be talking about the current bull run in precious metals. Keith, thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks. First time interview, and it's a fantastic environment out there to have a discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited for this one. Really interested to get your thoughts on pretty much everything gold and silver, what they've been doing in 2020. It's been a crazy year. I wanted to first jump into silver. So 1 month ago, we're looking at $18 an ounce, and today it's right around 28. Do you think this is just the start, and how much potential do you think silver has?
Well, quite honestly, I've been waiting for a correction, but I remember, back in 2011 or 2010, 2011, silver had, even more of a dramatic move. So, silver can do these types of things, and it's playing catch up very much with gold. We had gold at $1,200 a year ago, and now it's, broken through 2,000, now, touching 2,100, or at least close to 2,100. And silver has really lagged, and it's only in the last 3 to 4 weeks that silver has really caught up. And the last time gold hit its previous highs of $1,900 an ounce, silver had hit $50 an ounce. So at $2,100 gold, silver should be a lot higher than where it is today, despite the fact it's run up so quickly.
Do you think that, so I know you founded First Majestic Silver in 2002, so you've been in the game quite a while, but do you feel like this current run-up is different to 2011?
Well, I've been in the mining sector for 35 years, so I did put First Majestic together back, as you said, 2002, 2003, and I predicted $50 silver at the time, and did hit $50 in 2011. I didn't expect silver was going to fall all the way from 50, down to 13, but it was, a lot of money started going into the U.S. market, at that time, and we had this high-tech boom, Apple and Amazon, all the names. And so there was a flood of money into, U.S. stocks, and these miners or a lot of the sectors, the emerging markets, were left behind in the dust. And then it's only recently in the last year or so where people are starting to wake up to the fact that, hey, governments are printing money. This is not going to change anytime soon. The currencies as we know it are being debased by all governments around the world. And what is the granddaddy of all currencies? It's gold. And I think you have to have gold in your portfolio. It's just part of, my investment thesis. Silver, it tends to be the much more volatile, animal, or volatile commodity. So, if you can weather the volatility, as some people, often have challenges doing, it's gold times, 3 or gold times 5 from a volatility standpoint. But I love silver. Silver is a very understood commodity. I'd call it a strategic metal. Everything that we do in the human race, including this call, requires silver. People couldn't move around in their automobiles. They couldn't, their houses wouldn't work. All the gadgets that we're used to using on a daily basis would just simply not work. Silver is a critical component in every person's life on a daily basis, and it's very, very misunderstood. Silver is not gold. Silver is a strategic commodity that is required to do all the things we do as a human race to make this planet green, electrify the planet in different ways. And we're in a very severe supply constraint environment, and that's starting to show up in prices.
Right. Now, you mentioned supply constraint. I definitely want to talk about that. But one thing you mentioned before that was silver's volatility. I think we really can see that in the gold to silver ratio. I mean, we had all-time highs not too long ago. It was 1 to 120, I think. And now it's all the way down to 1 to 73 or somewhere in that range. So do you think the gold silver ratio is going to continue to drop? And do you put any belief in the GSR? Is that something that we should be looking at?
I'm a huge believer in the gold silver ratio. And you're right. It did, in March when the world was falling apart, and the Dow was down, or the S&P was down, 7 or 8 or 10% a day, and silver was being crushed, and everything globally was being crushed, and silver did drop quite substantially. and then the ratio exploded to all-time highs. Silver had never seen, north of $100 or pardon me, 100 to 1 silver to gold ratio in known history. So it was a very unusual event that occurred, and now it's correcting back to more normal levels. But your listeners should understand that the actual mining ratio, which is what I look at, has been dropping as well. In the 18 years since I put First Majestic together, the ratio has almost been cut in half, and I mean the mining ratio. So for every 1 ounce of gold that all mining companies are mining worldwide, only 8 ounces of silver are being mined, which is in itself pretty nuts. So you mentioned a ratio of 73 to 1. Well, that's the trading ratio. So that's what the market value puts on silver, but it should be, in my opinion, much closer to the actual mining ratio, because that's your actual supply demand number. So I think that's where we're going ultimately.
And if we take that to its final conclusion, so with a GSR of 1 to 8, and gold over $2,000 an ounce, we could be looking at potentially silver over 250 an ounce, if that happened. I mean, you think triple digit silver and numbers that higher in the cards?
Well, I've been saying triple digit silver for probably, 10 years.
Sure.
And, I've been obviously wrong. I was right on my $50 prediction, when I put First Majestic together, but I've been a little bit challenged since then. But I still do think that I will ultimately be right, and I'm still a bull on gold. I think gold's going to go north of 3,000, and if you listen to others out there, and there's many other experts out there that talk about much higher numbers for gold, but even at $3,000 gold, and call it 10 to 1. As an easy math, you're at $300 silver. I don't have a crystal ball, but those are the kinds of numbers that I think are very plausible.
Yeah, insane to think about. One thing you did bring up was, when everything sort of crashed back in March, I know silver went down to this is paper silver, right? Not physical, but I think it went down to $12, maybe even lower intraday. I think it maybe touched 11 for a second. But either way, how was everything from the mining standpoint? Were you guys selling silver at that time, holding on to it? Because I know a lot of the bullion dealers were holding on to their inventory, or they just jacked up premiums, right? Like APMEX is charging $25 a silver eagle. What did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, well, I would suggest that your listeners go to our website, www.firstmajestic.com, and look at our recent news releases. We put out the last 2 news releases. One was on our production for the quarter, and one was just our financial statements. And our Q2 numbers didn't have revenue for approximately 1 million ounces of silver and a few thousand ounces of gold. When silver and gold dropped the way they did, particularly silver, in March, I suspended all sales, and we didn't sell any silver below $17. And it took about, I think it was 4 to 6 weeks before the market recovered, and we carried over quite a lot of silver and gold into Q3. So that revenue is going to show up in Q3, which is obviously pretty good for our shareholders. It didn't particularly look great for Q2 because it made the revenue numbers much lower in Q2 than would have normally happened. But I just couldn't, think of selling silver at those ridiculous prices. I wasn't going to, be mercy to the banks and give our silver away to some of these crooked players that I think they're out there manipulating these markets. So I held on. I think it was the right decision to do, and lo and behold, we made probably 5 or 6 million extra in revenue as a result of that decision, and now we're selling silver at north of $25-26 an ounce, which is even going to look better for our Q3 and Q4 numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know coronavirus impacted virtually every industry. Is it still affecting First Majestic Silver's mines, or are you guys pretty much all back up and running at this point?
The 3 mines that we have are running. They've had a bit of a slow start. In Mexico, I'm not sure if your listeners understand what's gone on in Mexico, but the coronavirus has hit Mexico pretty hard. The the government has deemed a group of individuals as vulnerable individuals. So vulnerable individuals don't need to go to work, and these are individuals that are, higher than 60 years old, or with certain ailments like diabetes or obesity or heart conditions or things like that. The health department came up with a list. So there's about 18% of our workforce that is actually deemed vulnerable. So that 18% can stay home. So, it does impact the operations to some degree because, some of these individuals are some of our, highest and most, oldest and most skilled workers. And so we've had to fill in some of those gaps, which has been a bit of a challenge. Production over the last, since the beginning of August has looked pretty good, but July did have a bit of a slow start. But, we expect that, by the end of Q3 or to Q4, that everything will be back up and running. And we're working to try to make back the ounces we lost, during the closures, because we did have, a 6-week closure, as, many people obviously know.
Right. Let's kind of switch directions here. Obviously, there's been a lot of stimulus packages, right? And the future of the economy it's a bleak outlook at this point. Do you think that's good news for gold and silver? Are they going to continue to climb, or what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think they're related. The COVID, I guess, was the pin that burst the bubble. We've been waiting. This market has been on a tear. And when I mean this market, I mean the U.S. stock market primarily. And this is very similar to, I've been around for a long time in this market, and this is so reminiscent to 1999, 2000 to me. Only time will, of course, tell, because it's easier to look back than it is to look forward. But, when we had the NASDAQ bubble, Y2K, many of your listeners probably don't even know what Y2K is, but it's very reminiscent of that type of bubbly type of environment. And when it rolled over hard, and there was a couple of, pretty interesting corrections, and no one knew we were actually in a bear market. But, when the NASDAQ peaked out at 5,000 in March of 2000, over the next 3 years, it lost 80%, and it didn't hit its high until 2015. So it took approximately, go back and look at the chart yourself, but it was about 13 years that it took from the NASDAQ's peak for it to reach its peak again, I think in 2015. So that was a long bear market in the U.S. equity markets, and of course that turned around. It was that 15-year period, starting really about 2002, 2003, that the mining sector really took off, and we had a 10-year bull market where we saw silver prices go from $5 an ounce all the way up to 50, and we saw gold go from 250 to 1900. Now, if you look at the lows in let's call it December 2015, you look at $13 silver and 1100 or 1050 gold, and you look at the same types of moves, an 8 times move on gold and a 10 times move on silver, which happened from 2003 to 2012. You extrapolate that to today, and you're talking about $8,000 gold and pretty impressive silver prices. So I think that's what we're getting into. I think we're going to see at least a 5-year bull market, possibly a 10-year bull market like we had previously. But where who knows for sure. But that's the type of move I'm expecting to see.
Right. Yeah, and that's interesting too, a 5 or 10-year bull market, because a lot of people, they're looking at this and saying, okay, should I be getting out of the silver and gold game? And on my channel, I'm like, no. This is when you should be getting in. If you're not already, you're too late. So it seems like we agree on that for sure.
Well, look, didn't people say the same thing about Apple? I've looked at Apple. I've never actually bought Apple shares because I was always thinking, oh my God, I missed it. And Amazon shares the same thing, and Tesla shares are the same thing. Because it's hard to buy stocks when they're moving higher because you're always paranoid that you're too late. But I don't know. It's just there's with the money printing that's going on, with what's happening, and you bring up COVID, and I said it's got nothing to do with COVID. This is a financially driven phenomenon where we have a very major demographic move. The boomers are retiring. Governments are printing money like crazy because they're trying to support the economy. They're trying to support the market, thick and thin. They won't let this market correct. They won't let a natural economic recession, depression occurs, which is necessary to be healthy for the long-term sustainability of any country, any industry, or any economy. But they just won't let it happen. So they just keep printing money, and there's no end in sight. And as long as they keep interest rates close to zero and start, just keep adding deficit after deficit after deficit, the only place to be is in the precious metals. And who knows when that's going to end? Is it going to be 5 or 10 years before the governments say, uncle, and we've done it, we've made a mistake, and we're going to go back to a sound money type of system? I don't know, but that's where we have to go to obviously right this ship. But in the meantime, there's no political will to do that. So in my view, at least for the next couple of years, you got to be in the precious metal sector. If that turns into a 5-year, 10-year bull market, only time will tell.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting, the amount of inflation, right, because of all of this currency creation and whatnot. And you also mentioned interest rates being at zero. I believe in Europe, they're even in the negative, and they've said they're going to be zero here in the U.S. till I think 2022 or something. And so I wouldn't be that surprised if we went negative, and that just looks even more bullish for precious metals.
Yeah, and if that happens, the U.S. dollar being the major worldwide currency, other than gold, that's very negative for the U.S. dollar, and that just puts more support in the granddaddy of currencies, which is gold. And why are the Chinese and the Russians and many other countries around the world, why have they been buying gold, so much for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years? The gig is up. It'd be interesting to be, in some of these private meeting rooms where these top government officials are talking about trying to resolve the current situation, because I'm sure there's quite a few interesting conversations going on, and I'm sure gold's part of that discussion.
Yeah, undoubtedly. So let's switch gears here. Let's talk first Majestic Silver. So I know that there's some other large miners, obviously. How does First Majestic compare to them right now?
Well, First Majestic is all Mexico. I put the company together back in 2002, 2003. I came from a copper company. I put a copper company together in 92, 93, and that copper company is one of the biggest copper companies on the planet. And I looked at silver, and I just fell in love with silver in the early 2000s, just specifically for supply demand fundamentals. And I looked at silver and I go, holy cow, this is such a misunderstood metal. There's very few silver companies out there. Solar panels were in their infancy. Electric cars barely existed, and these two technologies now are consuming north of 20% of the silver production globally. And with all the electronics that we're using and cell phones and all the gadgets, silver consumption has just been skyrocketing over the last 20 years, and it's really causing a lot of issues in the supply demand fundamentals of the industry itself. And I predicted that, and despite the fact the last 5 years have been a little bit challenging, I think we're now getting back into the beginning of another bull cycle, which who knows what's going to happen with the price. But we positioned ourselves very focused on silver. 60% of our revenues in the form of silver, 40% of our revenues in the form of gold. We have 3 operating mines. We're the second or third largest silver producer in Mexico. We're one of the go-to names in the silver space. We produce about 24 million silver equivalent ounces a year. New York listed, 5,000 employees spread throughout Mexico. I could go on, but that's it,
Sure.
it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and so I would say, what's next, for your company? I mean, the stock price doubled in 2019. So what's on the horizon for First Majestic Silver?
Yeah, when it comes to predicting share prices, it's I'm not really allowed to do that. I am the founder and CEO, and I still think the stock is cheap, but I'm obviously biased, so I'm probably not the person you should be listening to. But,
Well, okay,
but
but if we take that a different direction, what's your company doing? Because obviously the price of silver is going up, but I assume you guys are still trying to become more efficient at mining and things like that.
yeah, of course. So back in 2014, you just for your listeners could kind of go back in time a little bit. We had $50 silver in 2011, and 2012. Most of that year we kind of averaging about $40. 2013 we're about averaging about $30, and 2012 or 2014, the floor fell out of silver and it crashed through $20 an ounce, got all the way down to $16 an ounce in June of 2014, and I panicked. I said, "What the hell's going on here?" And our costs were probably north of $20 an ounce, and we're spending lots of money. So we spent from 2014 to really 2018, 2019, a good 4 or 5 years of just turning over every single rock, looking for ways to save money, and we use technology, and I'm very proud of our innovative team. I put together a pretty solid IT group of professionals that really spent an enormous amount of time putting some pretty interesting processes and technologies into our operations, and we're pretty advanced. If you compare us to many of the other miners out there, it's pretty impressive what we've been able to achieve over that time. We cut our costs by 50%, and we're now today pretty profitable, and we're getting ready for this next big leg up in silver prices, and we're very prepared for it. And I guess from a longer term perspective, we're looking to how do we build the business, and we're looking at bringing on some of our other mines within our portfolio, because we do have some unperforming assets that we could turn on, but we're also looking at M&A as well. And we're with our market, or our market cap where it is, and the improvements that we've noticed or achieved over the last 12 to 18 months, puts First Majestic in a pretty strong position to make additional investments in the space to grow the business.
Yeah, and especially if we are looking at a 5 or 10 year bull run, this could be quite good. So one thing that I wanted to get your opinion on: a lot of people that listen to my channel are the stackers, right? They buy the physical metals, and I talk a lot about diversity, usually diversifying from silver to gold, because everyone's so heavy on silver, especially right now. But what about diversifying, into the miners and ETFs and other sort of paper silver products? I mean, I feel like if with this run up, there could be a lot of potential for gains there. So I'm assuming you share the same sentiment.
Yeah, but look, you have to have caution. Buying silver mining stocks, or gold, or just period mining stocks, period. Don't forget you're buying a stock. So companies fluctuate for whatever reason. There could be a bunch of outside factors that affect stock prices, not just the mining stock prices, but all stock prices. And you just don't know. It's hard to predict. So your risk of owning an equity is greater, or a stock is greater than owning metal, and that's just the bottom line. And I own a lot of silver. I own a fair amount of gold, and I love, looking at my metal, and my kids, they like to look at the metal as well. It's great to hold, and I love to have it, and I wouldn't stop ever owning, my physical metal. But from an equity or a stock perspective, that's where you really get the beta. And if you go back, let's use 2016 as an example, because it's what happens in this current run. You said the stock's already doubled, which is true, but if you go back and look at 2016, I think it's a pretty good measurement of what the potential could be, just based on history. So in January of 2016, our share price was $4 a share. Silver was $13 an ounce. Silver went from $13 an ounce to almost 21 by July of 2016. People can go look at the charts themselves. Our stock went from 4 to 25, I think it was, approximately. So our stock went up 5 times, and silver went up So the stock went up 500 times and silver went up about $7. So that's, what's that? That's like a or actually a 5 times move, 3 to 5
Right.
times move. So, if you, and that's what should happen with any good mining stock. If you get a good quality gold stock or good quality silver stock in your portfolio, it should outperform the metal on somewhere between, 3 to 5 times the move of the metal on a percentage basis. Doesn't always happen, but you also should remember it works the other way. So if metal prices are dropping, you also lose your investment more rapidly than you lose it if you own the physical metal, right? Because it's not as volatile as the equity. So it depends on really your investment thesis. Depends on how much your stomach can weather, and some people aren't fit to be in the stock market, and they should just be in physical metal. Other people have more risk tolerance and will want to dabble a little bit on the equity side. And if that's the case, go look at management teams. Don't get sucked into some promotion, some promoter that's selling you moose pasture somewhere in wherever. Make sure that it's a solid management team that has a track record, that has made major companies in the past, has created wealth for investors in the past, and that reduces your risk substantially if you go and follow management teams that have been successful historically.
Sure. Yeah. And one last thing I wanted to get your opinion on. A lot talked about converting silver if the ratio continues to narrow, and I think we agree it's probably going to go that route. What would be a good point in your opinion to do that, or should they just keep holding on to their silver bullion?
Yeah, look, I know Mike Maloney does that a lot. I listen to Mike Maloney, and maybe some of your listeners listen to him as well. He's very fact based, and he loves the sector, and he does trade the ratio. Like, he'll sell gold, buy silver, and sell silver and buy gold. I've personally never done that. I just I look at silver. I look at my physical silver and my physical gold as long-term assets that are going to remain in my portfolio until the day I leave this planet, and they'll be passed on to my kids. And I don't look at ever as liquidating my physical metal at all. Stocks are another animal altogether. Of course, I've got my core holdings in First Majestic Silver and First Mining Gold. I founded both of those companies, and those are my core assets in my portfolio, which obviously I can't sell unless they go to much higher prices, or potentially I might retire, which isn't going to happen anytime soon. But but nevertheless, the other investments, of course, being so knowledgeable about the mining sector, I play in the space a lot. But I trade the space because, when you see, you buy a stock at, 30, 40, 50 cents, and all of a sudden it's $1, you better sell half your position. Sure. And just that's what you do without even questioning it. It doesn't matter. Just sell half your position, and then the other half of your position is now free. So,
Right.
The other half of your position could go to zero and you're still break even, right? People have to have that type of discipline and trade this market, because it's very volatile and you can get your head handed to you if you're not smart. So be on top of your portfolio, pick good management teams, and trade the market.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Keith. Who can listeners contact in the company to get their questions answered?
Yeah, our main fellow in Vancouver, Canada, is our VP of Corporate Development, Todd Anthony. You can just go to the info@firstmajestic.com email address on the website. I would suggest people go look at our PowerPoint presentation, and there's a lot of really good information in there. There's also a ton of information about silver. If you really want to learn a little bit about silver, I would suggest you go there and really see some of the exciting things I think that are happening in the silver space. And of course, lots of stuff on First Majestic. And if you want to learn more about First Mining Gold as well, just firstmininggold.com. Their presentations on their website as well. And if a fellow named Spiro is there, again, just info@firstmininggold.com. Feel free to send emails to them, and they'll obviously get back to you with any answers to any questions that anyone may have.
Awesome. And everyone needs to make sure they follow Keith on Twitter as well. What's your Twitter, Keith?
Oh, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, my Twitter is just at Keith_Neumeyer. I send some interesting stuff out of things that I like. My portfolio holdings I often comment about, and I tend to put them out on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, Keith, once again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate getting all your thoughts and insight during this crazy time. So thanks again.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching my video. I sincerely appreciate it. If you enjoyed the interview with Keith Neumeyer, make sure to hit that thumbs up. Also, subscribe if you're new to my channel so you don't miss any videos talking about gold and silver. And last but not least, feel free to leave a comment down below. What did you think of the conversation, and what are your thoughts on silver and gold moving forward? All right, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Silver Dragons out.